From the Cronkite studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
Tonight on Cronkite News, a federal judge has declared the use of military funds for border wall construction unlawful. We'll take a look at what this means for the future of the border wall.
Plus, Cronkite News takes you deep into the wilderness to get an exclusive look at white mountain elk in Springerville, Arizona during their breeding season.
And NHL fans may have noticed changing colors out on the ice this season. We'll look at the science behind the league's new puck.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Ellie Nakamoto-White.
And I'm Anthony Totri. Thanks for joining us.
As the November 5th elections get closer, schools are hoping voters will help boost their funding.
Cronkite News reporter Rio Painter is following the story.
The election is just a few weeks away. More than 30 school districts are asking voters to give them more money, including the Peoria Unified School District.
So the override actually pays for something very critical right now, which is school safety. It's a very hot topic right now. We're trying to, with our programs, help stop violence actually before it starts. And by using more counselors and by using more psychiatrists and psychologists at our schools, we're able to help students get the help they need before something turns violent. So that's one of the important points of this override that's going through right now.
Along with the additional $4 million that will be used for school safety initiatives, the district would keep this $26 million that is being used for people in programs throughout the district. This is a mail-in only election. The Maricopa County Records Office started mailing out ballots this week. All ballots must be filled out and returned by November 5th. In the broadcast center, Rio Painter, Cronkite News.
It looks like the money President Trump is using to build the border wall could be in jeopardy. A federal judge ruled today that the president's national emergency declaration is unlawful. Back in February, Trump declared the situation at the U.S. border with Mexico a national emergency. That allowed him to bypass Congress and use money allotted for military construction to build the wall. El Paso County officials and a human rights group sued, asking for the court to block the declaration. They argued the president overstepped his authority. The judge appears to agree, but he notes other money could be used for the project. The former U.S. ambassador to the Ukraine told congressional investigators today she was removed from her position because of pressure from President Trump. That's according to a copy of her statement obtained by the Washington Post and the New York Times.
Marie Yovanovitch told lawmakers at a closed-door deposition that she was informed by the Deputy Secretary of State there had been a concerted campaign against me. She also said that Trump had lost confidence in her.
Yovanovitch appeared Friday after the White House and the State Department had directed her not to attend, according to a statement from the three Democratic committee chairmen leading the impeachment inquiry. In response, the chairman issued a subpoena to compel her testimony.
9 of the Democratic presidential candidates took part in a town hall focused on LGBTQ issues last night. The night highlighted the growing power of the LGBTQ community as voters and activists showed up in full force to call for greater equality and protection for trans women, among other things.
In which they can exist.
Stop killing us. How do we get those men to stop killing trans women of color? We are hunted.
I know.
Systematically hunted.
I know.
How do we do that?
There needs to be a safe place for the members of our transgender community to go when they have been exposed to that kind of harm, and we know there's not always a safe place.
We are not free when we swear an oath, all of us swear an oath it will be a nation of liberty and justice for all. Those are aspirational words right now until every LGBTQ American has equal rights, and I will get the Equality Act passed and into law in our country.
Though the candidates did not show many differences on these issues, many are happy to see some top contenders for the White House take these issues seriously.
Your smartphone may be sharing your location, and that information is being used by both political parties to get you to the polls. According to an article in the Wall Street Journal, political action committees are setting up geofences at rallies and other events to track you. Here's how it works.
You bring your smartphone to an event, like a political rally. If you're using an app that shares locations, the information is sent to one of two places: a company offering location tracking services, or a company that compiles this data and allows location tracking companies to tap into that stream. Groups, like political action committees, hire the location tracking company to sift through possibly months of your data. Online ad companies use that data to target ads back at you. In some cases, the data can even identify people offline by, say, their home address, allowing them to send flyers and donation requests to you.
You can make it harder to harvest your data by periodically resetting your advertiser ID. How to do that depends on the type of phone you have. You can also limit how apps track and share your precise location. Some apps may not work without location access, like Maps, but you may want to set those to track you only when the app is in use.
And new today, 2 California residents have died after a wildfire broke out last night just east of Los Angeles. Officials have now identified burning trash as the cause of the Sandalwood fire, which has killed 1 person and left 2 unaccounted for. Further north, the Saddle Ridge fire is devastating the Porter Ranch housing development, as over 100,000 residents are forced to evacuate and freeways in the area are shut down.
The high winds and dry conditions contributing to these wildfires are also responsible for the state's largest utility initiating an intentional blackout earlier this week. At this hour, nearly 300,000 residents remain without power.
It's elk breeding season in Arizona. Cronkite News reporter Melanie Porter trekked deep into the White Mountains to learn about elk and their importance in the community.
She joins us now in the studio. Melanie?
That's right. I traveled to Springerville, Arizona, which is in the White Mountains about 45 miles east of Show Low. I spent the entire day learning about and searching for elk and discovered that these animals are the crown jewels of this small community. The Arizona Game and Fish Department helped to manage the population of elk at Sipe Wildlife Area by keeping a close eye on the male to female elk ratios.
It's fun. It's fun if you've never heard one or seen it. It is a sound that is unlike anything else in the world. Now, this time of year in the fall, in the calving season, they'll come in about 80 to 100 of them with their little ones. It's like the trees start moving.
Elk are a huge economic contributor to the areas around here. They're also really important culturally, and they're one of the most abundant animals. We've noticed actually the biggest changes come with the hunting seasons. So that sort of predation pressure from humans has caused them to kind of switch their schedules, and they've become a lot more nocturnal.
And we count animals. So we're going to count calves, cows, and bulls. Now through that, we're going to get a ratio of how many we're actually seeing, whatever that equates to. And that ratio is specifically what our guidelines say that we need to have a healthy population. Hunters, that piece of the pie that we have, we would never be able to manage the population to make sure that it stays healthy.
I'm seeing more this year, for sure, and healthier. They look a lot healthier. Yeah, their coats and their conditions are healthier. I know it's because of the water, the minerals in the water, the vegetation, the feed, the grasses. It was so dry last year. It was hard for them to find good food plots.
With the amount of water we have, the amount of variation from, our 12,000 foot elevation from, Escadilla and Baldy all the way down to some of the lower elevation stuff that they can winter in. So they're not stuck in one habitat, they can move, and through that we can have a lot bigger, healthier elk population.
Wildlife experts are optimistic about the current health of the elk at Sipe Wildlife Area, but they say changes in weather, hunting, and natural predators impact the elk population. In the Broadcast Center, I'm Melanie Porter, Cronkite News.
The Coyotes picked up their first win last night against the Las Vegas Knights. And what a lot of people don't know is that the NHL is using a new puck. Sports reporter Nick White explains this color-changing technology.
The NHL has taken a move from the Coors Light playbook, but it doesn't have anything to do with beer. The same technology on the can that turns the mountains blue is now being used on hockey pucks. Hockey pucks take a lot of punishment during a game, but they are handled with great care before making their way to the ice, where they must be completely frozen before they are game ready.
I think they just bounce a lot. I think, frozen pucks are nice when, making passes, and the puck just seems to sit on the ice a little bit better when they're warm. They seem to be bouncy. They're just literally like a bouncy ball. It's hard to, keep control of the puck, and it definitely helps when they're frozen, for sure.
The standard NHL puck is made up of vulcanized rubber, which glides more smoothly across the ice when the temperature is below freezing.
There's a range the league likes it between 14 and 20, 18 being the preferred temperature.
This year, the National Hockey League is trying something new by using the same thermochromic coating Coors Light uses on their bottles and cans to show that the beer is cold. The NHL's logo color on the puck will change, letting the officials know it is not frozen anymore.
And even though the change is very simple, where the NHL logo is going from purple to white, a frozen puck can play a huge impact in the game of hockey.
Most teams, the locker room attendants do hang on to the game pucks until the day of the game. Recently, we just changed it here that I actually have possession of the game pucks for at least a few games in advance. So I keep them in one freezer in a separate room, and then the day of the game, I transfer them to our puck freezer that actually stays in the penalty box.
They have like 20 or 25 inside the penalty box there, and after every TV timeout and after every goal, they change it out. So, I mean, I've heard over 20 pucks. I mean, if it's a high-scoring game, they take a puck out every day time. So,
as long as the pucks are kept at the right temperature and the logo's color is purple, they will continue to be placed right where they are supposed to be, in the back of the net.
The logo is not the only thing changing. The NHL is in the process of putting a tracker in the puck to see how far and how fast it travels during a game. In the studio, Nick White, Cronkite News.
And now we're joined here today by Jake.
Thanks.
Jake, it's pretty cold in that ice hockey arena, but what's the weather looking like?
Well, the weather's looking pretty warm here through this next week, but for Arizona fall temperatures, a nice 90 degrees doesn't feel too bad. Now, let's take a look at it, shall we? As you can see with temperatures across the state today, right now, temperatures are in 86 and the 80s around central and southern Arizona, with temperatures ranging in the 50s up to the northern areas of the state. For those of you with Friday night plans like Anthony, happy birthday. Things will be a little cooler as the sun goes down. We're looking at temperatures getting to about the mid-70s, so you may want to bring a jacket when you're heading out tonight. Looking at the highs of tomorrow, it'll be 90 right here in the valley, 89 out in Yuma, 64 in Flagstaff, and 73 up in Holbrook. So good range of temperatures across the state. Here in Phoenix, though, I think a t-shirt and shorts is still a good idea. As you can see across the valley, once again, temperatures will range mostly in the 90s, with only Cave Creek and Whitman getting a 5-degree respite. And finally, for those of us with weekend plans such as the Taco Festival or Oktoberfest, it'll be around 90 degrees, which is pretty comfortable out here, but you may want to bear in mind that temperatures are going to drop later on in the day, but overall, sunny skies and nice temperatures as the week continues. Thanks very much.
Coming up next, Cronkite News and Review.
We take a look back at some of our top stories from earlier this week, including a look at the complicated history of adoptions in the Marshall Islands.
Few things unite people like sports, and we've got your front row seat to a wiffle ball tournament getting Arizona's special needs children into the game. Don't go away.
With wildfires, a scarcity of water, and other environmental issues facing the Earth today, it's critical to stay up to date with local impacts of a changing climate. That's why we created Elemental, Covering Sustainability, a multimedia collaboration between public television and radio stations. From climate change to water conservation to renewable energy and much more, Elemental covers the latest in sustainability news. Find our stories on our website, elementalreports.com.
Stay in the know on the go. At Cronkite News, we work hard to report the facts and keep you updated, whether we're on set or on the scene.
Taking it from the studio to the field. So I'm here in South Phoenix.
In Phoenix, we're just a click away. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or find us online at cronkitenews.azpbs.org.
Millions of people die every year from drinking dirty water. I would never have felt I had the ability to do something without ASU pushing me. We built filtration systems out of local materials with the people. To see those kids drink clean water for the first time, it's the most rewarding feeling that you can ever have. I went to ASU because I wanted to change the world. The thing I never would have expected is how the world would have changed me.
Welcome to another edition of Cronkite Sports Now. I'm Taylor Rocha. Let's talk sports.
For the latest on local sports and beyond, we've got you covered.
Let's do this thing.
We challenge reporters to go beyond, a game story. We want stories with depth.
It's just a crucial step from the college experience into the professional experience while you're still in school.
At Cronkite Sports Now, watch the journalists of tomorrow cover sports today.
Welcome back to Cronkite News in Review.
One of our top stories this week. Wednesday, Maricopa County Assessor Paul Peterson was arrested and accused of human smuggling in an adoption fraud scheme.
Peterson faces 62 charges across Arizona, Utah, and Arkansas, 32 of which originate in Arizona. Authorities say Peterson ran an adoption law practice in Mesa for years, bringing women from the Marshall Islands to the U.S. to give birth. Peterson's arrest has been sending shockwaves across Arizona. The respected lawyer and public servant was taken into custody last night, while officials today broke down the details of the case against him.
An indictment has been filed against you. It is charging you with one count of conspiracy, a Class 2 felony, one count of fraudulent schemes, that's booked as a Class 2 felony.
Maricopa County Assessor Paul Peterson was arrested last night after officials allege Peterson has been involved in an international adoption fraud scheme since at least 2015. Peterson has been indicted along with Linwood Jeanette, a woman authorities say was his helper. They have been charged with 32 felony counts in Arizona, Utah, and Arkansas.
What we've alleged and what we've discovered is that this adoption fraud schemes involves pregnant women from the Marshall Islands being flown to the state of Arizona to have their babies put up for adoption.
According to the indictment, Peterson, who was an adoption lawyer licensed in Arizona, flew dozens of women from the Marshall Islands to Utah and Arizona to give birth. Investigators say they believe the women participated in the fraud scheme, some of them unaware of the extent of the crime they were involved in. Peterson allegedly housed them and promised them $1,000 a month while they were pregnant in the U.S. Court documents also show Peterson falsely claimed the women were Arizona residents so they could receive Medicaid health coverage. Authorities are now charging Peterson with over $800,000 worth of fraud. Officials say that number is expected to rise.
It is alleged that Mr. Peterson would charge about $35,000 for you to adopt a child from his agency.
Our focus is on the individuals, these two specific individuals who have allegedly abused the system and ripped off Arizona taxpayers.
Authorities say the alleged scheme violates the Compact of Free Association international agreement between the U.S. and the Republic of the Marshall Islands. While Marshall Island citizens are allowed to travel to the U.S. without a visa, it does ban travel for adoption purposes. Today wanted to be very clear in saying that they are not going after the families involved and will not interfere with adoptions that have already taken place. Peterson is currently being held on a $500,000 bond. His next court appearance is set for October 15th. Live in the studio, Ellie Nakamoto-White, Cronkite News.
As we mentioned, the adoption scheme involved mothers from the Marshall Islands.
So why this place? Well, as Daria Yasmin explains, there's a long, tragic history involved.
In the 40s and the 50s, the U.S. tested nuclear weapons on the Marshall Islands. The radioactive materials left behind caused health problems. Even today, some of the islands are uninhabitable. To make up for that, in 1986, the U.S. compensated the islands financially and opened its borders to Marshallese immigrants, allowing them to work in the U.S. without a visa. According to an article in the New Republic, in the 1990s, there was a surge in international adoptions. With relaxed visas, the Marshall Islands became somewhat of an easy place to adopt children. But in 2001, a study done by BYU found that 87% of Marshallese mothers who gave up their children for adoption believed their children would return home once they reached 18. It's common practice in the islands for others to help raise children. It's like adding another family in marriage. The families join and stay in touch. The adoptions in the U.S. are closed, with many of the mothers never to see their children again. To try and stop this, the Marshall Islands Adoption Act of 2002 made it illegal to solicit a baby for adoption through financial incentive. Now all adoptions must be completed inside the country and approved by its courts.
During the first 6 months of 2019, Arizona ports of entry saw fewer pedestrians crossing than in previous years. That's according to the Bureau of Transportation Statistics.
And while commercial trucks crossing were actually up, the number of pedestrians coming and going between Arizona and Mexico was down 12% compared to the same period last year.
Cronkite News reporter Frankie McLister went to Nogales and explained some of the reasons why.
Well, that lower number of pedestrians crossing from Mexico into Arizona is starting to affect those businesses because those businesses rely on those pedestrians to be their customers.
Sometimes it's 2 minutes, sometimes it's 0. Sometimes you just walk up, and sometimes it's all the way up to the train tracks, which is usually like 2 hours.
Arizona resident Daniela Minerva frequently crosses the southern border, while her Mexican husband lives on the other side as he processes his immigration paperwork. It's a commute by foot that can be unpredictable, forcing her to plan her day around it.
It just doesn't feel like it should be that slow, you know?
Business owners say their wallets are also feeling what they describe as a slowdown in the amount of foot traffic crossing the international border. Rebecca Castaneda works at Cheese, which is a store located just feet away from the Nogales port of entry.
Every year, it's less and less. It's more down and more down.
Bruce Bracker is one of Santa Cruz County's supervisors and says Customs and Border Patrol being understaffed is one of the main reasons why wait times at the border can stretch for hours.
I know you've spent some time in downtown Nogales, and you're seeing, a lot of store closures and just not a lot of people on the street. You used to see people shoulder to shoulder on the street, especially on the weekends.
CBP says there's a multitude of reasons for the drop in pedestrians crossing the border. They include the overall U.S. economy, the value of the Mexican peso, border violence, travelers opting to enter the U.S. in cars instead of walking, and pedestrian commuters joining trusted traveler programs and using the SENTRI, also known as Sentry, car lanes.
It's wait time. So if you have a favorite store and you go in that store, but that store started making you wait half an hour, 45 minutes, 2 hours to check out, how long would that be your favorite store? Probably not very long. You'd find someplace else to shop.
That's how it is. But you have to just get used to it because that's how it is.
Well, and the dynamics between crossings between Arizona and Sonora are the dynamics of a pedestrian crossing between Arizona and Sonora is a great representation of family and economic ties between the two states. At the digital desk, I'm Frankie McLister, Cronkite News.
A league that is full of miracles, where kids, no matter their disability, get to play baseball.
As Miracle League Arizona starts its new season, Cronkite News reporter Lindsay Amundsen was out at opening day.
To kick off the new season of Miracle League Baseball, the league held its 4th annual Wiffle Ball World Series in Scottsdale, a tournament that helps support the over 300 Arizona Miracle League players live out their dream of playing baseball.
Jaden's going to tell us all what to do. Baseball!
The money raised from the Wiffle Ball tournament will help kids like left-handed slugger Caden Newman. Caden was diagnosed with spastic diplegia, cerebral palsy, and a global developmental delay at the age of 2, and autism at the age of 4. But with the help of this fundraiser, it allows these kids to play in a league fully designed for them.
Amazing.
It is amazing. It is.
Yeah.
They took their time out of their Saturday to come and play ball together to support you, and it means a lot.
Yeah, it means a lot to me.
For 1 hour a week, the Newmans get to watch Caden do what he loves most, play baseball. With his White Sox hat, Rockies jersey, and dinosaur Converse on, the countless surgeries, long rehabilitation, and any limitations don't matter as soon as he steps on the field.
Special needs parents in our lives and our families are so surrounded by the diagnosis and the doctor's appointments and the therapies that being able to come and know that there's some place for our children to play sports and for us to, just enjoy it and just watch them have fun.
When Caden first started out at the Miracle League 3 years ago, he had to use his reverse walker. Now he can run around the bases all on his own, something his family was told he probably wouldn't ever be able to do.
And that first time that he put his walker away and he walked around the bases, I mean, that is just like a Miracle League crying moment. It was so phenomenal. You're so happy for these kids that they're growing and they're advancing and they're able to walk by themselves now. You can't, it's kind of indescribable.
When he first got diagnosed, we didn't know. We couldn't even predict what the next week was going to look like, much less what the next, 18 years would look like. And now we can look at him and we can watch him, and watching him walk around the bases at the Miracle League for the first time was huge for everybody.
For Cronkite News tonight, thanks for joining us.
For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.